My name is Autumn Henderson. I'm 18 years old, and yesterday I became the sole trustee of a multi-million-dollar estate. At 9:02 a.m. this morning, my parents, my uncle, and my golden child brother pulled up to my cabin with a moving truck. They didn't knock, they didn't ask. They just started unloading boxes, laughing about which rooms they were going to take and how they were going to spend the money from selling the land my grandfather spent 50 years tending. My father looked me dead in the eye and said, "It's for the family, Autumn. You'll understand when you're older." He had no idea that 48 hours ago, I had signed exactly 3 documents that made their entire plan a felony. He didn't know that the man standing quietly in the shadow of the porch wasn't a guest, but a sheriff's deputy. And he certainly didn't know that the family he kept talking about was about to lose everything they thought they were entitled to. I watched them carry in a sofa, scratching the hardwood floor my grandmother used to polish by hand. My pulse wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. I felt a cold, hard calm that I'd been practicing for years. I checked my phone. 9:04 a.m. The electronic filing had cleared. The deed was recorded. I walked out onto the porch, took a sip of my coffee, and prepared to ruin their lives. Before I tell you what happened when the sheriff stepped into the light, if you end up liking this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with it. Drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let me take you back to when I was 14, when I first realized my family didn't love me. They just tolerated me. To understand why I did what I did, you have to understand the economics of the Henderson household. Love was a currency, and my brother Sawyer was the only one allowed to spend it. We grew up in a comfortable suburb of Knoxville, the kind with manicured lawns and 2-car garages. But inside our house, there were 2 very different sets of rules. Sawyer was 2 years younger than me. He was loud, athletic, and charming in that way that makes adults forgive things they shouldn't. I was quiet, bookish, and observant. When Sawyer wanted to play travel baseball, my father wrote a check for $4,500 without blinking. He bought him the top-tier gear, the $400 bat, the private coaching sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays. When I asked for a $120 graphing calculator for my AP calculus class, my mother sighed, checked the budget on her phone, and told me I needed to learn the value of saving my allowance. "Money doesn't grow on trees, Autumn," she said, scrolling through Amazon looking for new cleats for Sawyer. I bought a used calculator from a senior for $40. It had a cracked screen, but it worked. That was the dynamic. Sawyer got the investment, I got the lecture. The first time I truly felt the weight of it was when I was 14. It was a Tuesday in October. 3:45 p.m. I had rushed home from the mailbox, clutching a thick envelope from a prestigious private high school in Knoxville. It was a merit scholarship offer. Full tuition, covered books, lab fees, everything. It was worth roughly $22,000 a year. I had spent months studying for the entrance exam, staying up until 2 a.m. doing practice problems while Sawyer played video games in the next room. I burst through the front door, the envelope shaking in my hands. "Mom! Dad!" I yelled. My mother was in the kitchen, on the phone. She glanced at me, held up a finger to silence me, and kept talking. "Yes, I know. The coach said he needs more protein." My father was in the living room, watching a replay of a college football game. "Dad, look," I said, holding the letter out. I got in. Full ride. He looked at the letter, then back at the TV. "That's nice, honey. Good job." That was it. No hug, no, "We're so proud of you." Just, "That's nice." 5 minutes later, the back door slammed open. Sawyer walked in, looking sullen. He had a bruise on his cheek. "I got suspended," he mumbled, dropping his bag on the floor. The energy in the room shifted instantly. My mother hung up the phone. My father muted the TV. They rushed to him like he was a wounded soldier. "What happened?" my mother asked, her voice trembling with concern. "Some kid talked trash. I hit him," Sawyer said. For the next week, the house revolved around Sawyer's suspension. My parents had meetings with the principal. They hired a tutor so he wouldn't fall behind. They took him out for ice cream to cheer him up because he was feeling down about not being able to practice with the team. They spent $300 that week on takeout and treats for him. My acceptance letter sat on the kitchen counter for 3 days. Eventually, coffee got spilled on it. I wiped it off, framed it myself, and hung it in my room behind the door where no one else would see it. That was the moment I realized my achievements were background noise. Sawyer's mistakes were the main event. The lesson cemented itself the following year. Sawyer was 15. He was riding his bike, a $1,200 mountain bike my parents had bought him for getting a C+ in English, and he decided to try a trick off the curb. He lost control and slammed into our neighbor's parked sedan. He scratched the fender and put a significant dent in the passenger door. I was watching from the window. I saw him get up, check his bike, and look around to see if anyone saw. He didn't see me. When my parents got home, the neighbor came over. He was polite, but firm. The repairs were going to cost $1,900. I expected consequences. When I was 10, I had accidentally broken a vase while dusting. I was grounded for 2 weeks and had to pay for it out of my birthday money. But this was Sawyer. My father wrote the neighbor a check that evening. Then, he turned to Sawyer. "You okay, son?" "Yeah, just shook up," Sawyer said. He wasn't shook up. He was bored. "The bike's frame is bent," my father said, frowning. "It's not safe to ride." 2 days later, on a Saturday morning, they took him to the bike shop. They came back with a newer model. Better suspension. Lighter frame. Cost $2,500. "We want you to be safe," my mother told him. "And this one has better brakes." They rewarded him for destroying property. I sat at the dinner table that night, listening to Sawyer brag about the new gear shifts. I looked at my father. "I need $50 for a AP biology field trip," I said quietly. "Now, Autumn," my father said, cutting a piece of steak. "We just had a big, unexpected expense with the car and the bike. You need to be understanding. Maybe you can mow some lawns this weekend?" I didn't say anything. I just nodded. I was 15, but I felt 40. I realized then that fairness was a fairy tale. In this house, I was the insurance policy, the backup plan, the one who didn't cost anything. Sawyer was the investment. There was only one place where I felt like a person and not a piece of furniture. The cabin. It sat on 40 acres in the Smoky Mountains, about 90 minutes from our house. It belonged to my grandparents, Lloyd and Ruby Henderson. Lloyd was a man of few words but immense capability. He had built the cabin himself in the 70s, board by board. Ruby was the warmth that filled it. I spent every weekend I could with them. While Sawyer was at tournaments and my parents were socializing with other sports parents, I was in the mountains. Grandfather Lloyd taught me how to work, not busy work, but real work. "Watch the grain, Autumn," he'd say, handing me a splitting maul. "The wood wants to split. You just have to find the weakness." We spent hours repairing the porch, sealing the deck, clearing brush. He didn't treat me like a girl who needed help. He treated me like an apprentice. "You have good hands," he told me once. We were sitting on the porch steps, drinking cold water from mason jars. It was July. The air smelled of pine resin and rain. "Steady. Most people rush. You don't." Grandmother Ruby taught me how to listen. In her kitchen, smelling of yeast and dried sage, she would tell me stories about the family. She saw things my parents didn't. "Your father," she said once, kneading dough, "has always been impressed by flash. He likes things that shine. He forgets that gold is soft. Iron doesn't shine, but it holds up the house." She looked at me then. "Your iron, Autumn." She knew about the calculator. She knew about the scholarship. She never said it outright, but she would slip a $20 bill into my pocket before I left. "For your studies," she'd whisper. They were my real parents. Everything changed 2 years ago. It was November, a Thursday. 4:12 a.m. The phone rang in the hallway, that shrill landline ring that only means bad news at that hour. I heard my father answer. His voice was low, then shocked. Grandmother Ruby had fallen, a hip fracture. But at the hospital, they found more. Advanced heart failure. She was gone before sunrise. Grandfather Lloyd lasted 3 months without her. The doctors said it was pneumonia, but I knew better. He simply checked out. He didn't want to be in a world without her. By February, they were both gone. I was 16. I felt like the tether that held me to the earth had been cut. The funeral was small. My parents played the grieving children perfectly. My mother wore a black dress that cost more than my first car. My father accepted condolences with a solemn nod, talking about legacy and family roots. Sawyer spent the entire service texting under the pew. After the burial, we went back to the house. The lawyer, Mr. Jonathan Rice, asked us to meet him in his office the following week for the reading of the will. My parents were buzzing with energy on the drive home. The land values in Sevier County are skyrocketing, my Uncle Victor said. He had ridden with us. Victor was my father's younger brother, a man who had entrepreneur in his bio, but bankruptcy filings in his public record. That cabin sits on prime acreage. If we subdivide, we're talking serious liquidity. We could finally redo the kitchen, my mother said, looking out the window. And Sawyer needs a reliable car for college. I want a truck, Sawyer piped up from the back seat, like a lifted Ford. We'll see, champ, my father said, and he sounded excited. We'll see. I sat in the corner of the back seat, staring at the back of my father's head. They weren't mourning. They were calculating. They hadn't lost parents. They had won the lottery. But they didn't know about the conversation I'd had with Grandfather Lloyd 3 weeks before he died. It was just the two of us in his hospital room. The machines were beeping. A slow, rhythmic EKG. Autumn, he had wheezed, gripping my hand with surprising strength. His skin felt like dry paper. People get funny when money is involved, even family, especially family. I know, Grandpa, I said. I don't want the land chopped up, he said. I don't want condos on the ridge. I want it kept. Can you do that? It's a heavy burden. I can do it, I promised. Good, he said. I've talked to Jonathan. It's all set up. But you have to be smart. They'll come for it. They'll come for you. I squeezed his hand. Let them come. The reading was on a Tuesday, 10 a.m. Jonathan Rice's office smelled of old leather and furniture polish. He sat behind a massive mahogany desk, a stack of folders in front of him. My parents, Uncle Victor and I, sat in the chairs opposite. Sawyer hadn't come. He had practice. Jonathan opened the folder. He adjusted his glasses. Lloyd and Ruby were very specific, Jonathan began. His voice was dry, professional. He went through the minor bequests first. A few $1,000s to the church. Ruby's jewelry to my mother. She smiled, touching her throat. Lloyd's tools to Victor. He frowned, clearly expecting cash. And finally, Jonathan said, the residue of the estate, including the primary residence, the cabin at 440 Ridge Road, the surrounding 40 acres of timberland, and the investment accounts held at First Horizon Bank. My father leaned forward. I could hear his breathing change. Is to be left, Jonathan continued, in its entirety. My mother reached for my father's hand. To their granddaughter, Autumn Henderson. The silence in the room was absolute. It lasted 4 seconds. 5, 6. What? My father said. It wasn't a question, it was a malfunction. Autumn is named as the sole beneficiary of the real estate and liquid assets, Jonathan said calmly. She's 16. Uncle Victor exploded. He stood up, knocking his chair back. That's insane. Lloyd was senile. He was of sound mind, Jonathan said, his eyes hard. And the will was updated 6 months ago. This is a mistake, my mother said, turning to me. Her eyes were wide, frantic. Autumn, honey, you can't manage a property like that. It's too much responsibility. The taxes alone. The estate includes a trust fund specifically allocated for taxes and maintenance, Jonathan interjected. My father looked at me. For the first time in my life, he looked at me not as a piece of furniture, but as an obstacle. We'll contest it, he said. His voice was low, dangerous. You can try, Jonathan said, but the clause is ironclad, and there is a no contest clause. If you challenge the will and lose, you forfeit the smaller bequests. My father sat back down. He rubbed his face with his hands. Fine, he said. Fine. It's in her name, but we're her parents. We're her legal guardians until she's 18. We control the assets until then. Jonathan looked at me. I looked at him. We both knew the law. Technically, yes, Jonathan said. You have guardianship over the property until her majority. My father smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a man who just found a loophole. Good, he said. Then we have 2 years to figure this out. He stood up, put a hand on my shoulder, and squeezed. It hurt. Don't worry, Autumn, he said. We'll take care of everything. You won't have to lift a finger. I knew exactly what that meant. They were going to bleed the accounts dry, neglect the maintenance, and prepare everything so that the second I turned 18, they could pressure me into selling. They thought they had 2 years. They forgot who raised me. They forgot I was iron. I walked out of that office and didn't say a word. I got in the back seat of the car, I put my headphones on, and I started counting down the days. The erosion started slowly. That's how erosion works. You don't notice the ground shifting until the foundation cracks. It began 3 months after the funeral, May 12th, 10:15 a.m. I was at school, sitting in AP History, when my phone buzzed in my backpack. I usually ignored it, but I had set up alerts for the estate account. As the future beneficiary, I couldn't touch the money yet, but Jonathan Rice had set it up so I received read-only notifications for every transaction over $500. He called it transparency. My parents called it unnecessary oversight, but they couldn't legally stop it. I checked the notification under my desk. Withdrawal for $200. Memo: emergency property maintenance, HVAC repair. I frowned. Grandfather Lloyd had replaced the entire HVAC system 2 years ago. It was a top-of-the-line train unit. It shouldn't have needed a $4,000 repair. That weekend, I told my parents I wanted to go up to the cabin to collect some of Grandma's books. My father hesitated. The place is a mess right now, Autumn. Victor is up there doing some work. Best to stay out of his way. I'll be quiet, I said. I just want the books. When we arrived, the first thing I noticed was Uncle Victor's truck parked on the grass, not the gravel driveway. The second thing I noticed was the silence. No compressor running, no tools banging. I walked around the side of the house to the HVAC unit. It was humming along perfectly. There were no new parts, no service tags, no invoice stuck to the side. I took a picture. Timestamp, Saturday, May 16th, 1:42 p.m. Then I went inside. Uncle Victor was asleep on the leather couch, a beer bottle balanced on his chest. The TV was blaring a fishing show. Hey, I said loudly. He jumped, the beer splashing onto his shirt. Geez, Autumn, don't sneak up on people. Dad said you were fixing the AC, I said, keeping my voice flat. Oh, yeah. He wiped his shirt. Freon leak, nasty business. Had to replace the coils. Took all day Thursday. I looked at him. I looked at the pristine, dust-covered unit outside that clearly hadn't been touched in months. Right, I said. Thanks, Uncle Victor. I went to my room and opened my laptop. I logged into a hidden folder I had named Biology Notes. Inside, I created a spreadsheet. Entry 1, May 12, $4,200 withdrawal. Claim, HVAC repair. Reality, false. Evidence, photos of unit, metadata confirming no work done. I didn't know it then, but that spreadsheet would eventually grow to 34 rows. I knew I couldn't fight them alone. I was 16. I had no legal standing to stop them from spending the maintenance budget, provided they could justify it on paper. I needed eyes on the ground. Our nearest neighbor at the cabin was a man named Mr. Abernathy. He was a retired actuary who lived half a mile down the ridge. He was 74, meticulous, and hated noise. He also hated my Uncle Victor, who had once backed over Mr. Abernathy's mailbox and driven off without leaving a note. I biked over to his place later that afternoon. He was pruning his roses. Mr. Abernathy, I called out. He peered over his glasses. Autumn, haven't seen you since the service. How are you holding up? I'm managing, I said. Mr. Abernathy, I have a favor to ask. A weird one. He stopped clipping. I'm listening. My uncle, he's going to be up here a lot, supposedly doing repairs. I'm worried about the property. Mr. Abernathy snorted. That man couldn't repair a sandwich. Exactly, I said. If you see anything unusual, or if you see that no work is being done when they say it is, could you just jot it down? Maybe take a photo if it's visible from the road? He looked at me for a long moment. He saw the desperation I was trying to hide. I have a trail camera, he said quietly. Pointed at the main road access. Captures every vehicle that comes up your drive. Time-stamped. My chest loosened. That would be incredible. I'll email you the logs every Sunday, he said. Your grandfather was a good man, Autumn. He respected boundaries. Your uncle does not. Thank you, I whispered. That Sunday, the first email arrived. Subject, activity log, week of May 18th. Attachment, 4 photos. The photos showed my Uncle Victor's truck arriving on Friday night with a bed full of empty coolers. It showed him leaving Sunday morning with the coolers full. I zoomed in. In the back of the truck, sticking out of a cooler, was a distinct, hand-carved duck decoy, one of Grandfather's prized collectibles, worth maybe $400 on eBay. He wasn't just faking repairs, he was looting the house. Over the next 18 months, the theft became brazen. They stopped trying to hide it because they thought I wasn't looking. They thought I was the quiet, submissive daughter who was just grateful they were handling the burden of the estate. Incident, the roof repair. Date, August 14th. Withdrawal, $2,500. Claim, storm damage repair to slate roof. Reality, Mr. Abernathy's camera showed a roofing truck pull up, stay for 20 minutes, and leave. No ladders came off. I climbed up there myself the next weekend. The same cracked slate tile I had noticed 3 years ago was still there, exactly where it had always been. My evidence, drone footage I took with Sawyer's drone, which I borrowed, showing the undisturbed moss growth on the tiles. Moss doesn't grow back in 3 days. Incident, the legal fees. Date, November 2nd. Withdrawal, $3,500. Claim, retainer for estate administration. Reality, I called Jonathan Rice's office pretending to be my mother's assistant. Just checking on that invoice for $3,500, I said. The receptionist paused. Honey, we haven't billed the estate since February. Mr. Rice capped his fees. My evidence, a recording of that phone call. Incident, the tuition. Date, January 15th. Withdrawal, $8,000. Claim, property tax supplement. Reality, the property taxes were only $2,400 a year, but coincidentally, that same week, Sawyer got a new car, a gently used Ford F-150. Down payment? Exactly $8,000. My evidence, a photo of the dealership paperwork Sawyer left on the kitchen table. I took a picture of it next to the bank alert on my phone. The dates matched perfectly. I didn't confront them. Not once. Every time I saw a withdrawal, I felt a sharp spike of adrenaline, then the cold wash of discipline. Let them dig, I told myself. Let them dig the hole so deep they can never climb out. I saved everything. I backed it up to a cloud drive. I backed it up to a USB stick I taped behind my headboard. I printed hard copies and kept them in a locker at school. I was building a forensic audit of my own family. The turning point, the moment I decided I wasn't just going to protect the money, but destroy their hold on me, came 3 months before my 18th birthday. It was Christmas Eve, 11:45 p.m. We were at home in Knoxville. The house was quiet. My parents had gone to bed after a party. Sawyer was out with friends. I went downstairs to get a glass of water. I saw my father's laptop open on the kitchen island. The screen was dim, but awake. I walked over. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. It was an email draft. Addressee, Victor Henderson. Subject, liquidation timeline. My hand hovered over the trackpad. I held my breath. Vic, I talked to the developer again. He's antsy. He wants to break ground in April. That means we need to close the sale by March 1st. Autumn turns 18 on February 19th. We need to have the papers ready for her to sign that morning. We'll frame it as a transfer of trusteeship document. She won't read it. She trusts us. Once she signs, we list. The developer is offering $2.4 million for the land. We split it 3 ways. You, me, and a trust for the kids, controlled by us. We can finally pay off your liens. And I can get that boat. Just keep her happy until then. Don't let her go up there too often. I stared at the screen. The white light burned into my retinas. $2.4 million. She won't read it. She trusts us. They weren't just stealing nickels and dimes for repairs. They were planning to liquidate my grandfather's entire legacy the morning I became an adult. They were going to trick me into signing away my birthright so my father could buy a boat and my uncle could pay off his gambling debts. And the worst part? A trust for the kids. They were going to lump me in with Sawyer. My inheritance would become our money. And our money really meant Sawyer's money. I pulled out my phone. My hands were finally shaking, not from fear, from rage. I took a photo of the screen. Then I forwarded the email to my secret account. Then I deleted the sent mail log. I stood there in the dark kitchen, listening to the refrigerator hum. I looked at the family photos on the fridge. Me, smiling at 5. Me, smiling at 10. I didn't recognize that girl anymore. I went upstairs. I packed a bag, just essentials. I realized then that I wasn't living with my family. I was living with parasites. And the host was about to wake up. The next morning, Christmas Day, I was the picture of compliance. I opened my presents, a sweater, a generic gift card to a bookstore, and smiled. "Thank you," I said. "I love it." "We just want you to focus on your senior year," my mother said, sipping a mimosa. "Don't worry about the estate stuff. Your father is handling all the headaches." "I know," I said. "I appreciate it so much." 2 days later, on a Tuesday, I skipped school. I drove to Jonathan Rice's office. I didn't have an appointment. When I walked in, the receptionist looked surprised. "Autumn, is everything okay?" "I need to see Mr. Rice," I said. "Now. It's an emergency." Jonathan came out 5 minutes later. He saw my face and ushered me into his office. I sat down. I didn't cry. I opened my backpack and pulled out the binder. "They're stealing everything," I said. "And on February 19th, they're going to try to sell the land." I laid it out. The spreadsheet, the photos from Mr. Abernathy, the bank records, the email about the boat. Jonathan read through it in silence. He flipped the pages slowly. His jaw tightened. He stopped at the email about the transfer of trusteeship. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "This is conspiracy to commit fraud," he said quietly, "and breach of fiduciary duty. If we took this to court now, we could remove them." "No," I said. He looked up. "No? If we do it now, it's a fight," I said. "They'll drag it out. They'll claim they were acting in my best interest. They'll gaslight the judge, and I'm still a minor. I'll still have to live with them for 2 months." "So what do you want to do?" Jonathan asked. "I want to wait," I said. "I want to let them think they've won. I want them to walk into that cabin on my birthday thinking they own it." I leaned forward. "I want to draft the irrevocable trust now," I said. "I want it predated, prepared, and ready to execute the second the clock strikes midnight on February 19th. I want to transfer everything, the deed, the accounts, the assets, out of their reach before they even wake up." Jonathan looked at me. A slow smile spread across his face. It was a shark's smile. "The Tennessee Uniform Trust Code allows for that," he mused. "Since you are the sole beneficiary, once you turn 18, you have absolute power of appointment." "Exactly," I said. "I want to lock them out, legally, physically, financially." "It's the nuclear option," Jonathan warned. "If you do this, there is no going back. They will hate you. I looked at the binder. I looked at the photo of the HVAC unit. I thought about the $40 calculator. They don't love me, Jonathan, I said. They love what I can give them. I'm just cutting off the supply. Okay, Jonathan said. He pulled a fresh legal pad toward him. Let's get to work. The next 6 weeks were a blur of acting. I had to be the perfect daughter. I had to be dumb. I asked questions like, so, how do property taxes work again? So my father could explain it to me condescendingly. Don't you worry your pretty head about that, he'd say. It's complicated. Okay, Daddy, I'd say. Meanwhile, I was meeting Jonathan at lunch breaks. We were drafting the trust documents. We named it the Ruby and Lloyd Preservation Trust. I appointed myself as the primary trustee. I appointed a corporate co-trustee, the bank, to require dual signatures for any withdrawal over $10,000, just to protect myself from myself. I also prepared the eviction notices. Jonathan drafted them. Notice to quit. Notice of trespass. We'll have the sheriff on standby, Jonathan said. I know Deputy Harland. He was a friend of your grandfather's. He won't like what they're doing. February 18th. The day before my birthday. My parents were giddy. They were practically vibrating. We're going to have a big party at the cabin tomorrow, my mother announced. Just family. We'll order pizza. It'll be nice. Sounds great, I said. And, my father added, casually, I have a few papers for you to sign. Just legal formalities to transfer the title officially to you. Standard stuff. Sure, I said. I can sign whatever you need. I saw them exchange a look. She bought it. That night, in my room, I packed my real bag. Not just clothes, my birth certificate, my social security card, the hard drive with the evidence, the framed acceptance letter to the private school I never got to attend. I set my alarm for 11:59 p.m. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was silent. Down the hall, my parents were sleeping, dreaming of their $2.4 million payday. My phone buzzed, a text from Jonathan. Docs are ready for digital signature at 12:01. Sheriff Harland is briefed for 09 LAR arrival. I took a deep breath. I wasn't scared anymore. I was just ready for the war to begin. My 18th birthday fell on a Friday, February 19th. By 5:30 p.m., the cabin smelled like grilled steak and wood smoke. My grandparents' cabin, my cabin. The party was already in full swing. My parents had insisted on doing it right up here. One last birthday as our little girl before you're officially an adult, my mother had said, her voice bright and brittle. They arrived around 3:15 p.m. Sawyer carried in a duffel bag like he was moving in for good. My father hauled in grocery bags. My mother brought a store-bought cake that said, "To New Beginnings," in blue frosting. I knew what the new beginnings meant to them. It meant the end of my control. "Happy birthday, kiddo," my father said, hugging me a beat too long, his eyes scanning the rafters like he was already picturing demolition plans. We've got some paperwork to simplify everything, but tonight, we celebrate. Victor showed up at 4 p.m., toolbox in hand, as if we didn't all know he had never actually fixed anything in his life. He kissed my mother on the cheek, slapped my father on the back, and winked at me. "Big day, Autumn," he said. "Big day for all of us." I just smiled. "It is," I said. "You have no idea." They thought they were hunters closing in. They didn't realize they were walking into a trap I'd spent months setting. Dinner was loud. Laughter, clinking forks, Sawyer's voice carrying above everyone else's as he recounted some practice highlight. My mother kept topping up my father's wine glass. The fire cracked steadily in the stone fireplace. At 7:12 p.m., my father stood up at the head of the table with his glass raised. "To Autumn," he said. "Our smart, capable girl. She's about to take on some big responsibilities, but we know she can handle it. With our guidance, of course." Everyone chuckled. I felt my lips curve in a polite smile. Inside, I was counting heartbeats. He went on about family and legacy and pulling together. He never once said my grandparents' names. Not once. When he sat down, my uncle leaned in. "We'll go over the documents after cake," he said quietly. "Simple stuff. We found a template online. You'll just sign where we flag. It's basically what Jonathan would have done, just with fewer fees." "A template online," I repeated. "Sounds efficient." He grinned. "See? You get it." At 7:38 p.m., they lit candles on the cake. 18 tiny flames flickered in the dim light. "Make a wish," my mother said, her eyes shining with something that wasn't quite love. I looked around the table, at Sawyer, already imagining his upgraded truck, at Victor, mentally spending money that wasn't his, at my father, thinking, she trusts us, she won't read it. I inhaled slowly. The smoke curled in my lungs. "I wish you would all show me exactly who you are," I thought, "so I don't have to doubt myself ever again." Then I blew the candles out. At 8:04 p.m., I excused myself to the bathroom. Instead of turning right down the hall, I went left into my grandparents' old bedroom. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it for 1 second, just one breath. Then I pulled my phone from my pocket. A text from Jonathan was already waiting. "Doc packet live. Link below. Timestamp will show 8:05 p.m. Sign when ready." I clicked the link. The trust documents opened. The Ruby and Lloyd Preservation Trust. 47 pages I'd already read a dozen times. At 8:06 p.m., with my family laughing 3 rooms away, I scrolled to the end and signed my name with the tip of my finger. Autumn Elaine Henderson, trustee. The system processed for a heartbeat. Then, execution successful, recording queued. I felt it hit me like a physical shift. The deed to the cabin, the 40 acres, the investment accounts, everything my grandparents had built, no longer sat in my name as an individual for anyone to bully or manipulate. It sat in an irrevocable trust with me as the sole trustee and clearly defined terms. They could rage at me, they could guilt me, they could even cut me off. But they could not touch the land. Not anymore. I checked the clock on the nightstand. 8:08 p.m. Down the hall, my father called out, "Autumn, you okay in there? We've got something for you to sign while we're all together." I unlocked the door and stepped back into the hallway, my face schooled into neutral. "I'm coming," I said. "I'm ready." I had never meant anything more. They had set up a little signing station at the end of the dining table, a neat stack of papers in a manila folder, a blue pen laid carefully on top. Sawyer stood behind my father's chair, smirking like he was in on some big adult secret. "Here we are," my father said, tapping the folder. "This just makes everything smoother. It acknowledges what was always intended, that this place belongs to the family, not just one person. You're still on there, of course, but as co-owner. With me. And eventually with your brother." He said it kindly, like he was offering me a favor. "Yeah," Sawyer added. "It's not fair for you to have all this in your name. You don't even like people. I'll be the one actually using it." My mother laughed too loudly. "It's just paperwork, sweetie. Nothing changes day to day. It's all still ours. Just more official. Developers like clean title." She caught herself at that last word, but it was already out. Developers. I pulled out the chair and sat down. The papers were clipped together, signature flags sticking out in 4 places. I noticed a notary stamp from some online service in the corner. Fake, according to Jonathan's research. My father slid the pen toward me. "All you have to do is sign," he said. "We've got it all sorted. The house belongs to us now, like it always should have." There it was, the mask slipping. I picked up the pen. I turned it between my fingers. "Before I sign anything," I said calmly, "I want to ask you something." My father frowned. "What?" I looked at him, then at my mother, then at my uncle, then at Sawyer. "When," I asked, "was the last time any of you asked me what I wanted?" Silence dropped like a stone. 3 seconds. 5. 10. My mother blinked first. "Autumn, this isn't about wants. It's about what makes sense." "That's not what I asked," I said. My voice was still calm. too calm. I asked when you last asked me what I wanted. My father's jaw tightened. This is not the time for dramatics. We've done nothing but support you. I laughed once, softly. Support me? With whose money? Victor shifted in his chair. Okay, this is getting weird. Just sign the papers, kiddo. Lawyers are expensive. We did this ourselves to save everyone trouble. I set the pen down. You're right about one thing, I said. Lawyers are expensive. I reached into my bag and pulled out a different folder, a thicker one. I laid it gently on top of theirs. Luckily, I said, mine is already paid for. I opened the folder. The first page was a clean color printout of the $4,200 HVAC repair withdrawal. May 12th, I read out loud. $4,200. Emergency HVAC maintenance. I slid a photo out from behind it. The picture of the untouched unit, dust settled, undisturbed. This is the unit 3 days later, I said. No service tags, no replaced parts, no sign of work. I flipped to the next page. August 14th, $12,500 for storm damage roof repair. I held up the drone footage, freezes. Funny thing about moss, it doesn't grow back overnight. This is the roof before your supposed repair. This is 3 weeks after. Same cracks, same moss pattern. Victor's face drained of color. You've been spying on us? I tilted my head. On my own property? No, I've been watching. Sawyer swallowed. His bravado was starting to crack. I turned the page again. January 15th. $8,000 pulled from the estate account under tax supplementation. Taxes were $2,400 for the year. But that same week, I reached into my bag and pulled out the photo of his truck paperwork. Sawyer got a down payment on his truck, exactly $8,000. Dad said, Sawyer stammered. You said it was from your bonus. My father shot him a warning look. Stop, he snapped. Autumn, this is out of context. You don't understand how cash flow works. We've been handling complex things for you. I cut him off. For me? I repeated. Because that's not what this looks like. I clicked my phone awake and swiped to the photo of his email to Victor. I laid it on the table. This, I said, tapping the printed copy, is you, Dad, writing to Uncle Victor on Christmas Eve. I read it aloud, word for word. Autumn turns 18 on February 19th. We need to have the papers ready for her to sign that morning. We'll frame it as a transfer of trusteeship document. She won't read it. She trusts us. Once she signs, we list. The developer is offering $2.4 million for the land. We split it 3 ways. You, me, and a trust for the kids, controlled by us. We can finally pay off your liens, and I can get that boat. My father stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. You had no right to go through my private emails, he said. His voice was shaking now. That's illegal. I forwarded it from your open laptop, I said. In my house, paid for by my grandparents' money that you've been siphoning for 2 years. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Gary, tell me you didn't write that. He didn't answer. Tell her, I repeated quietly. Tell her you didn't plan to trick me into signing away the land my grandparents specifically left to me. Tell her you weren't going to package it as guardianship paperwork so you could control everything while calling it family. Victor tried to recover. You're blowing this out of proportion. We always intended to cut you in. You'd get your share. We were just managing the process. I pulled the final document from the folder. The executed trust summary from Jonathan. See, that's the thing, I said. You can't cut me in on something you don't own. I slid the summary into the center of the table so they all could see. As of 8:06 p.m. tonight, I said, this property, the surrounding 40 acres, and the associated investment accounts were transferred into the Ruby and Lloyd Preservation Trust, an irrevocable trust. I am the sole trustee, no co-owners, no parental oversight, no family claims. My father snatched up the paper, skimmed it, then slammed it down. This won't hold, he snarled. You're a child. There are undue influence arguments. We can challenge this. We'll say the lawyer misled you. We'll say, you can say whatever you want. I replied. To your attorney. I looked toward the front door. Or, I added, you can say it to mine. Right on cue, knuckles rapped on the wood. 3 solid knocks. The entire room froze. Victor laughed nervously. You invited people? Now? I walked calmly to the door and opened it. Jonathan Rice stepped inside, his suit pressed, his expression calm. Beside him stood a uniformed sheriff's deputy, badge catching the firelight. Deputy Harland, the same man who had attended my grandparents' funerals. Evening, Ms. Henderson, Jonathan said, using my last name like I was a client, not a kid. Evening, I replied. Thank you for coming. My father's face went red. What is this? Jonathan set his briefcase on the sideboard and opened it, pulling out several copies of a document. This, he said evenly, is formal notice. As of tonight, this property is held in an irrevocable trust for which Autumn is the sole trustee. Any attempt to transfer title, encumber the property, or execute documents on her behalf without her explicit consent constitutes interference with a protected estate. He handed 1 copy to my father, 1 to my mother, 1 to Victor. Deputy Harland stepped forward. We also have reports, he said, voice steady, of attempted fraudulent filings related to this property, utilizing forged notary stamps obtained online. Attempting to transfer title without owner consent, especially with fraudulent instruments, is considered title fraud under Tennessee Code. He let that sink in. We're here tonight as a courtesy, he added, to advise you that any further attempts along those lines will result in criminal charges. This is your warning. Sawyer was clutching the manila folder so tightly the edges were crumpling. His hands were trembling now. We have paperwork, he blurted, holding it out. We did it right. It's legal. We had it notarized and everything. Jonathan took the folder from him, flipped through the pages, then shook his head once. These filings, he said, are invalid on multiple grounds. The signatures are inconsistent. The notary stamp does not match any registered in the state, and the underlying premise assumes an ownership structure that does not exist because Autumn's grandparents did not leave the property to you. They left it to her, alone. He looked directly at my father. You knew that, Jonathan said. You were in the room, my mother whispered. We thought we were just correcting things for the family. Deputy Harlan studied her for a beat. Ma'am, he said, not unkindly. What you're describing is not correcting things. It's attempting to override a legally executed will and trust because you don't like the outcome. He turned slightly, addressing all of them. Here's what's going to happen, he said. You're going to stop giving orders to the moving crew. You're going to leave the property tonight. You're going to consult independent counsel if you still think you have a claim. And if you or any agents you send come back here and try to move so much as a chair without Ms. Henderson's permission, we'll be talking about trespass charges on top of the rest. The room went very, very quiet. The only sound was the fire popping. Sawyer sank down onto a half-packed box, the manila folder limp in his hands. I only did what they told me, he said. His voice sounded small. I thought it was for us. For a second, my chest ached, not for my parents, for him, for the kid who had been taught that everything revolved around him, right up until the moment it didn't. Victor began pacing in short, frantic lines, his usual smirk gone. This is overkill, he muttered. We can work this out internally. There's no need for threats. We were just trying to keep things in the family. You can't punish us for that. You punished yourselves, I said softly. Every time you took $1 that wasn't yours. Every time you treated me like a signature instead of a person. My father rubbed his temple, looking suddenly older. Autumn, he said, you're making a mistake. You don't know how hard life is. We've been under pressure you don't understand. We needed that money. I met his eyes. I know, I said. You needed it more than you needed me. He flinched. My mother reached for my arm. We're still your parents, she said. You can't just cut us out. Blood is blood. You'll regret this when you're older, when you have kids and realize. I stepped back out of her reach. You never taught me that blood means anything, I said. You taught me that performance does, that utility does, that I matter when I'm useful and vanish when I'm not. I'm just applying the lesson. Jonathan cleared his throat gently. We'll also be filing a civil claim, he said, for attempted title fraud and intentional interference with inheritance rights. The evidence Autumn has collected is comprehensive. He didn't say devastating, but it hung there anyway. Victor swore under his breath. You're going to bankrupt us. I thought of the scholarship letter stained with coffee, the $40 calculator, the bike, the truck, the boat. You were perfectly willing to bankrupt me, I replied. You just didn't think I'd notice. My father tried one last time, his voice cracking at the edges. We can fix this, he said. We'll apologize. We'll put your name first on everything. We'll involve you in the decisions. Just don't do this in front of other people. We're still your family. I looked around the room, at Jonathan, at Deputy Harland, at the movers standing awkwardly near the doorway, unsure if they should flee or stay. Then I looked back at my father. Do you remember, I asked, what you told me when I showed you my scholarship letter? He frowned, thrown by the change of subject. I said I was proud of you. No, I said. You said, that's nice. Good job. And then you turned up the volume on Sawyer's game highlights. His mouth opened, closed. And do you remember what you told me every time I asked for help? I continued. For field trip money, for a calculator, for anything that wasn't about Sawyer? He didn't answer. So I did. You said, we can't deal with this right now. I picked up my bag and slid the trust folder back inside. So here's my answer, Dad, I said, my voice steady. I can't deal with this right now. I stepped away from the table. My boots clicked against the hardwood my grandfather had laid by hand. This cabin is not your leverage, I added. It's my home. This land is not your lottery ticket. It's my responsibility, and you, I looked at each of them in turn, are not my guardians anymore. You're just people who made a series of choices. These are the consequences. I walked toward the door. My father's voice broke behind me. Autumn, please. I'm begging you. I'm scared. If this goes to court. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. I hear you, I said, but you taught me that family shows up for you when it's convenient, not when you need them, so I'm just returning the favor. I opened the door and let the cold mountain air wash over me. If you want mercy, I finished, glancing back once, talk to the judge. Then I stepped out onto the porch as the deputy began directing the movers to put everything back where they found it. Behind me, the house that had once been my refuge became, finally, mine. Not because a piece of paper said so, but because I had chosen myself over people who never would have chosen me. Jonathan filed the countersuit 3 days later. February 22nd, 9:45 a.m., Sevier County Superior Court. Case number 26 CV 1482. Count 1, attempted title fraud. Count 2, intentional interference with inheritance rights. Count 3, breach of fiduciary duty as temporary guardians. We didn't have to hunt for evidence. They had created it for us. Discovery was a bloodbath for them. Jonathan subpoenaed the bank records, the fake notary service, the developer emails, even Sawyer's phone records showing the quick title transfer forms he'd Googled at 2:14 a.m. the night before my birthday. My father hired a lawyer. Victor declared bankruptcy to dodge the worst of it. My mother called me 6 times the first week, leaving voicemails that started with, "This is a mistake," and ended with, "You're destroying us." I didn't return any of them. The trial lasted 4 days. May 14th, 17th. I testified first. I walked into the courtroom wearing the navy cashmere sweater my grandmother had knitted. I sat in the witness box and opened the binder. I read the withdrawals, showed the photos, played the recording of the notary call, displayed the Christmas Eve email. The judge, A stern woman named Patricia Klein asked only one question when I finished. "Ms. Henderson," she said, "did your parents ever ask your permission to spend any of these funds?" "No, Your Honor," I said. "They told me they were handling it." She nodded once. She never looked at my family. Their defense was pathetic. My father took the stand and claimed miscommunication. Victor blamed bad advice from the internet. Sawyer, now 17 and looking like a scared kid, said he didn't know it was wrong. The judge wasn't buying it. Her ruling came down the afternoon of May 17th. "Compensatory damages," she said, reading from the bench, "in the amount of $87,430 for documented withdrawals and legal fees. Punitive damages in the amount of $125,000 to deter similar conduct. Total judgment, $212,430. She paused, looking over her glasses. "This court finds the defendant's actions not only legally reprehensible, but morally bankrupt. The property will remain in the irrevocable trust as executed. Case closed." My father slumped in his chair. Victor buried his face in his hands. Sawyer looked like he might vomit. I felt nothing. Not joy, not vindication, just finality. The judgments were enforced immediately. The bank froze their accounts, wages were garnished, liens were placed on their vehicles, their house, their savings. Victor's bankruptcy didn't protect him from the punitive damages. Creditors he'd been dodging for years smelled blood. By June, his truck was repossessed. By August, he was renting a trailer 2 hours south. My parents sold their second car to make the first payment. They refinanced their mortgage. My mother took a part-time job at a real estate office. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sawyer lost his football scholarship. The university did background checks. When the news hit the local paper, local families sued over inheritance fraud. The coach quietly rescinded the offer. The last payment came through in October, a direct deposit into the trust account. Final balance, $212,130, paid in full. Contact stopped entirely after the ruling. Phone numbers blocked. Social media unfollowed. No birthday cards, no holiday texts. No, "I'm sorry." Once in September, I drove past their house on the way to Knoxville. The "for sale" sign was crooked in the yard. The lawn was overgrown. I didn't stop. The cabin became my full-time home that summer. I deferred college for a gap year to settle the estate. I tended the garden, fixed the porch roof myself, matching shingles from Gatlinburg, nailed secure. Split firewood until my hands blistered, then calloused. Evenings by the fire, I read their books, drank tea from grandmother's chipped mugs. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of the people who had actually loved me. By my 19th birthday, I had rented out a small guest cabin on the property to eco-tourists. Clean income, no developers, no condos. I started community college in the fall, majored in forestry management. Because that's what you do when you inherit ironwood. You learn how to steward it. Mr. Abernathy brought me pie on Thanksgiving. "Your grandfather would be proud," he said. I believed him. I wasn't lonely. I was free. What I learned isn't about revenge. It's about arithmetic. Some people treat family like an ATM. They swipe until it declines, then get mad at the machine. My grandparents taught me that real family doesn't ask you to fund their choices. They ask what you need and show up. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. Loyalty guarantees family. Protecting what matters sometimes means releasing the people who only want to take. If you're sitting there thinking, "This is my story," you're not alone. Thousands have shared in the comments below. I know this is a lot. If this hit you hard, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more stories like this. Drop a comment. Have you ever had to protect your inheritance from family? What happened? I read everyone, and if you're facing pressure right now, inheritance disputes, golden child dynamics, boundary testing relatives, set the line now. Don't wait for the moving truck. One final timestamp, February 19th, 2026, 9:13 p.m. I'm sitting on my porch, coffee in hand, watching the mist lift off the valley. The pines are whispering. The land is secure. This is peace. You can have it too. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourself and the people who actually show up.